morning. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, triple threat. A combination of flu, COVID cases, and a respiratory virus are already putting a strain on hospitals this fall. It's causing concern among doctors who worry the situation could get worse in the winter.
The last few weeks is something that I've never seen before.
We're surging, meaning we're bringing patients into areas of the hospital that we never used before.
What you need to know to stay safe this winter and what public officials are doing to try and stop the spread. A new era. The United Kingdom has a new prime minister this morning. Rishi Sunak has become the next leader of Britain, ending weeks of political turmoil that led to the resignation of Liz Truss. We'll break down what Sunak's ascension means for the UK. Now he plans to tackle the challenges facing the country. Under fire, Adidas ends its relationship with Kanye West after a string of anti-Semitic comments. We'll have the latest on the pressure the sportswear giant was facing because of its deal with the polarizing artist. And we'll take a look at the growing concern over anti-Semitism across the U.S. And strength in numbers. The issues affecting Latino voters are gaining more importance with each election. This morning, we'll take you to Florida, where the minority vote could have a major impact on the crucial midterm races there. Talking plenty about the election here in the coming weeks, including later this hour.
Yeah, exactly. 2 weeks from today, but people voting across the country already.
Exactly. Millions already. We're going to begin, though, first with the growing concern this morning over that tripledemic that could affect children this winter.
Yeah, we're already seeing a spike in flu cases and a surge in a respiratory virus impacting children. Now we're being warned about a potential new wave of COVID cases. Pediatric hospitals in some states are reporting they just don't have enough hospital beds to keep up. NBC News national correspondent Gabe Gutierrez joins us now from Rhode Island, where they've been hard hit. Hey, Gabe, good morning.
Savannah and Joe, good morning. This children's hospital in Rhode Island is operating at 125% capacity. It's using parts of the facility that it's never used before. And half of the young patients in its ICU have the respiratory illness, RSV. This morning, concerns of a potential tripledemic are growing. The flu, RSV, and COVID ramping up earlier than expected.
The last few weeks is something that I've never seen before.
Rhode Island, Delaware, Maine, and Washington, D.C. now reporting more than 90% of their pediatric hospital beds are full. Several other states between 80 and 90%. Many patients battling RSV, the common respiratory illness that's usually like a simple cold, but can be very serious in children under 2.
It's very worrisome because we're not even in winter. It's still only fall. So as the winter hits, as flu starts coming, where are we going to put these kids?
In Providence, Hasbro Children's Hospital is now at 125% capacity. Extra patients staying in the emergency department while they wait for available beds to be admitted.
It's unprecedented, and because of that, we are sort of in a whole new world right now. We are trying to manage the sickest of the patients right now and let people know that if they're coming in with more minor complaints, that they might have to wait for a while.
As for the flu, pharmacy giant Walgreens now says activity at its clinics is more than 10 times higher than it was last season, and that it's doubled in just the past 2 weeks.
We're seeing it in the cities in the South, and we're seeing it move a lot faster than we have in the past.
All of it weighing on parents across the country.
He was having a hard time breathing.
In South Carolina, Corey Robertson's newborn son had RSV and was on a ventilator to help him breathe.
I was very scared. You know, he's 7 weeks old, so I definitely had fear that I haven't really felt before, just the unknown.
Today, President Biden is set to get his Omicron COVID booster shot as public health officials urge Americans to make sure that their COVID and flu shots are up to date to potentially ease the strain on hospitals like this one in the coming months. Joe and Savannah.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez, thank you so much.
Earlier on the Today Show, White House COVID response coordinator Dr. Ashish Jha joined Savannah Guthrie and Hoda Kotb. He discussed all these health concerns and how public health officials are responding.
Looking at these overflowing hospitals, we're calling it a tripledemic. How concerned are you about the moment that we're in right now?
Yeah, so, it is concerning. We have 3 respiratory viruses that are circulating and all of them going up. We have RSV, we have flu, we have SARS-CoV-2 or COVID. The good news here is that we've got terrific vaccines against two of them, both influenza vaccines as well as new updated COVID shots. If people got those two, they can really keep them out of the hospital, prevent them from getting seriously ill. That will make an enormous difference in keeping healthcare capacity under control and really helping people get through the winter ahead. So I'm actually pretty confident our vaccines are going to hold up really well. The brand new COVID vaccines are going to hold up well. If you're relying on your old vaccine from 9 months ago or an infection from a year ago, that's probably not going to be good enough. That's where we are with COVID for a vast majority of people. For most people, this is now a once-a-year shot. So what I've been encouraging people is like, you go get your flu shot, you go get your COVID shot. It's going to make a big difference as you go into the holiday season.
And because there's no vaccine for RSV, Dr. Jha recommends that parents and caregivers take proper precautions, like avoid having your children around other sick kids and avoid play dates if another child is showing symptoms or feeling sick.
Turning overseas now, Britain has a new prime minister this morning. It's third in just 7 weeks. Rishi Sunak was invited to form a government after meeting with King Charles. Earlier, Sunak now faces the daunting task of uniting a fractured Conservative Party and tackling the country's ongoing economic crisis. NBC News foreign correspondent Kelly Kobaya joins us now from London with more on this. Hey, Kelly, good morning.
Savannah, good morning to you. Yeah, in his first speech as Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak called this country's economic problems profound. He's going to have to make spending cuts in government. He promised to make those difficult decisions with compassion, but also admitted that he has a lot of work to do to earn back the public's trust after what has been months, really, of chaos.
Rishi Sunak is therefore elected as leader of the Conservative Party.
A history-making moment amid the chaos of British politics. The country's first British Indian Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, meeting with King Charles this morning. Britain's new leader is the third Prime Minister this year and facing a massive challenge. The pound sharply down against the dollar, inflation surging, and borrowing costs through the roof.
There is no doubt we face a profound economic challenge. We now need stability and unity.
At 42, Sunak is the youngest British leader in more than 200 years and the country's first leader of color. A former finance minister, he's won praise for his economic policies.
Borrowing your way out of inflation isn't a plan, it's a fairy tale.
But he's expected to oversee huge spending cuts to balance the books, an unpopular move, especially given his wealthy background. The son of Indian immigrants, Sunak was educated at Oxford, then Stanford, going on to earn millions as a banker and marrying the daughter of a billionaire Indian tech giant.
It's always going to be a problem for the Conservative Party being seen as the party of the rich.
Sunak's predecessor, Liz Truss, lasted only 44 days in office, pushed out after her economic plans blew up Britain's finances. Her predecessor, Boris Johnson, forced to quit after a series of scandals. The British public totally fed up.
I think we're a laughing stock now.
What an absolute farce all this stuff is.
But with no election until January 2025, many voters just hope Sunak won't be as bad as his predecessors.
Richie is not an angel, not by any stretch of imagination, but he's the best of the lot.
And along with all of those domestic issues, there is, of course, the war in Ukraine. The UK is the second largest military donor after the United States. But the question now is, will this fiscally conservative prime minister keep that money flowing? Savannah.
All right, Kelly, thank you so much.
We're learning new details this morning about a deadly mass shooting at a high school in St. Louis. Investigators now say the 19-year-old gunman was a former student at the performing arts school where he opened fire yesterday morning. 3 people were killed, including the gunman, who died after a shootout with police. NBC News correspondent Emily Ikeda joined us now from St. Louis. Emily, good morning.
Joe, good morning. Central Visual and Performing Arts High School remains closed this morning, as well as another school neighboring building, after 2 people were gunned down here and several others hospitalized with injuries. This behind me, an all too familiar picture. Balloons, notes, and flowers lining this school building turned crime scene.
This morning, another community traumatized and heartbroken by a school shooting that killed a teacher and sophomore. A local news chopper capturing the terrifying scene as hundreds of students and staff scrambled to safety.
We report that the shots being fired from room 309.
The chaos unfolding just as the school day was getting underway at Central Visual and Performing Arts High School in St. Louis, Missouri.
We started hearing glass breaking from the outside and gunshots outside the door.
Freshman Adrian Bolden, like many desperate students, barricaded doors and eventually escaped through a classroom window.
Are you hurt? I love you too.
Frightened parents on the other end of phone calls, helpless.
Just to hear my baby cry like that and I can't be there to help her, that like really hurt me.
Some students coming face to face with the 19-year-old gunman who police have identified as Orlando Harris, a recent graduate of the school with no criminal history. He died in the hospital after a shootout with officers.
Me and him made eye contact, and I'm glad I made it out because his gun got jammed.
Among the victims, 61-year-old Jean Kuska, a longtime health and gym teacher who wrote on the school's website, "I cannot imagine myself in any other career but teaching." Also, teenage sophomore Alexandria Bell, her family, including 8 siblings, saying she loved to dance.
She was everything to me. No matter how I felt, I can talk to her, and it was all right. That was my baby.
Police say the toll could have been much worse if officers had not arrived within minutes and confronted the suspect, who was armed with a long gun and loads of ammunition.
This could have been much worse. The individual had almost a dozen 30-round high-capacity magazines on him.
At this point, do we know how the shooter got into the school?
Hey there, Joe. I think I lost you there, but I will tell you this. According to authorities, the school had metal detectors, security guards, and locked doors, which police say did help slow the gunman down, but they would not reveal how he still managed to get inside. Investigators did collect evidence from the suspect's car and are looking into whether he suffered from some kind of mental illness. Joe, I'll add the ATF and the FBI are on the ground here assisting with the investigation.
All right, Emily, thank you so much.
Now, there are just 2 weeks left until the midterm elections, and millions of Americans have already cast their ballots in early voting. Meanwhile, candidates are stepping up their campaigns, making those last-minute arguments to win over voters. NBC News Now anchor Holly Jackson takes a closer look at where some of those campaigns stand.
Good morning. Officially now 2 weeks to go until Election Day, and we're looking at key races across the country, including in Pennsylvania in that race for Senate. And tonight, what could be a make-or-break moment in a debate, the first and only one set there, as people in critical states are starting to vote early, and our new polling shows polarization is off the charts.
Call it a keystone clash today in Pennsylvania in a race that could tip the balance of power in the Senate. Republican candidate Dr. Mehmet Oz face-to-face in the first and only debate against Democratic Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, who's downplaying expectations after a stroke 5 months ago that affected his speech, telling the Philadelphia Inquirer, "I fully expect that we're going to miss some words and at times maybe looking for the right word." That debate set for tonight, coming after another overnight in Florida, where the firebrand Republican governor, Ron DeSantis, is widely speculated to be looking past November to 2024 and a possible White House run. His opponent, former Governor Charlie Crist, trailing in the polls.
Yes or no, Ron? Will you serve a full 4-year term if you're reelected governor of Florida? It's not a tough question.
The only worn-out old donkey I'm looking to put out to pasture is Charlie Crist.
2 weeks out from Election Day, and across the country, people are interested, really interested, with a new NBC News poll showing 70% of registered voters raring to cast their ballots, the highest number of any midterm campaign in the history of our poll. Republicans more enthusiastic than Democrats, 78 to 69%. But right now, stunning polarization. 80% of voters think the other side poses an existential threat to the country. President Biden, in a kind of pep talk from party headquarters, laying out the stakes.
Everybody wants to make it a referendum, but it's a choice between two vastly different visions for America.
Those competing visions on display in the critical state of Nevada, where the closely watched Senate race could help determine which party controls that chamber next year.
I know what this fight is about.
Incumbent Senator Catherine Cortez Masto narrowly trailing Republican Adam Laxalt, who's arguing the country's off track with Democrats in charge.
Every single area of regular life for working class Nevadans is heading the wrong direction.
The economy and cost of living, the biggest motivating factor for a third of voters.
Can I get a job? Can I pay for my home? Can I pay my rent?
As for the top issues that matter right now, about a third of Democrats say it's threats to democracy, with dozens of Republican election deniers on ballots. And about a third of Republicans say their top issue, jobs and the economy, with 2 weeks to go now in the countdown until Election Day. Back to you.
All right, Hallie, thank you.
Time to get a check on your morning news now. Weather?
Yeah, which means Michelle Grossman is back with us to tell us more about how it feels like winter already. Hey, Michelle.
Hey there, guys. Yeah, really cold out west. We're looking at temperatures in the 40s to 50s, certainly cold enough to snow in some spots into the 30s. We're at the freezing mark in some spots, so we're going to see snow in the Cascades and northern Rockies. This is back behind a really powerful cold front that's moving through the middle of the nation. Ahead of this front, we're so above normal in terms of temperature, so feeling like spring in portions of the Ohio Valley, the east, with temperatures in the 70s and some spots close to 80 degrees in the Ohio Valley. So this is where the front is located, easy to see on radar, stretching from Chicago through the Mississippi Valley into the south. We're seeing heavy rain where you see those brighter colors is where we're seeing the heaviest rain, and even seeing some lightning, hearing some thunder on the tail end of this cold front. And that's going to be a concern as we go throughout this Tuesday, because we have a lot of Gulf moisture that it's interacting with, and we're going to see the potential for some severe weather. We had severe weather last night in portions of eastern Texas, also Oklahoma. We had wind reports, also hail reports, and that's what we're expecting again today, but could see a tornado or two. So the setup for today, we're looking at snow showers in portions of the Rockies. We could see higher elevation snow, more than that in terms of 8 inches or more. And then we're looking at that severe storm, the severe storms in portions of the south, feeling like spring in the northeast, and also looking at kind of a cloudy, drizzly day in portions of the northeast. We have fog this morning, so not the brightest of days. That's really not going to clear out until Thursday. But if you're in portions of the south, in Tennessee, Mississippi, Arkansas, we're looking at in Alabama, we're looking at the potential for some strong to severe storms, 8 million people at risk. We could see winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. That could certainly cause damage on its own. A chance for a few tornadoes, so we'll watch that very closely this afternoon. And also the chance of some hail, like we saw yesterday, that could cause damage as well. Now, heavy rainfall is falling along this front. It will continue to do that as it moves east. And where you see the yellows and the oranges, that's where we're going to see the heaviest rain. Chicago, you could see heavy rain. Peoria, St. Louis, Springfield, you need the umbrellas as you head out on this Tuesday. And this is good news, though, for many. We are in a drought situation, the second driest October on record in Indianapolis. We've only had 0.09 inches of rain. Same story in Cincinnati, the fourth driest. So they will take any rain they can get as we head throughout this Tuesday. It's windy, too, along this front. Ahead of this front, 29 million people impacted by a wind advisory. We could see winds gusting up to 45, 50 miles per hour, even up to 60 within some storms. So leaves are still on the trees. The ground will be wet. That could bring down some power lines as we go throughout today. Weather whiplash in terms of temperatures. These are the highs yesterday. International Falls, 70 degrees. Minneapolis, 70. That was 16 degrees above normal, 74 in Cedar Rapids. But look what happens as we go throughout that day. That cold front's going to sweep away those warm temperatures. We're looking at temperatures so much cooler today. 53 only in Minneapolis, just 41 in International Falls. Cedar Rapids dropping 24 degrees to 50 degrees, 57 in Kansas City. So we'll be warm today in the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, portions of the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast. Temperatures climbing into the 70s, 77 degrees in Cincinnati. That's 15 degrees above normal. 78 in Toledo, 77 in London. And then we're going to kind of sweep through, too, as we head throughout tomorrow. And we're looking at temperatures only in the 60s in Pittsburgh. Back to you guys.
All right, lots of ups and downs coming. Yeah, thanks, Michelle.
Yeah.
And coming up on Morning News Now, new developments this morning.
Adidas is now severing ties with Kanye West after the rapper's string of anti-Semitic remarks. We'll have reaction to that and a look at the rise of anti-Semitism across the U.S. when we come back. Welcome back. A series of anti-Semitic remarks made by Kanye West is sparking widespread backlash against the rapper turned business mogul.
Yeah, the artist's recent controversies have called into question his relationship with Adidas, but now they too are cutting ties. This morning, the sports company announced they're ending their partnership with Ye. NBC News correspondent Stephanie Goss joins us now on set with the latest. This just broke this morning. Hey, Stephanie.
Hey, guys. Good morning. You know, Kanye West is one of the most successful musicians of all time, but it's what he has been saying offstage that has him in hot water again. Over the past few weeks, he's repeatedly made anti-Semitic comments in interviews and on social media, and companies and celebrities are cutting ties.
Breaking news this morning, Adidas confirming it is ending its lucrative partnership with Kanye West, now known as Ye. The company saying in a statement, Ye's recent comments and actions have been unacceptable, hateful, and dangerous, and they violate the company's values of diversity and inclusion, mutual respect, and fairness. The rap star made a series of anti-Semitic comments. The brand has been under fire for its association with West. West doubling down on his anti-Semitic messages overnight.
It's genocide and population control that Black people are in today in America that is promoted by the music and the media that Black people make, that Jewish record labels get paid off.
This past weekend, a group of neo-Nazi demonstrators hung a banner from an overpass in L.A. showing their support for West's comments. His ex-wife, Kim Kardashian, tweeting, "I stand together with the Jewish community and call on the terrible violence and hateful rhetoric towards them to come to an immediate end." The company has not released specific sales numbers from its Yeezy line, but industry analysts estimate it brings in up to $2 billion a year, around 10% of Adidas' total sales. Amid all the controversy, the company released its latest Yeezy Boost sneaker over the weekend. Kanye's partnerships with legendary fashion house Balenciaga and The Gap both ending in recent weeks. On Monday, the talent agency CAA said it dropped West as a client, and a production company is shelving a new documentary about him. But the musician and designer refusing to back down, even taunting Adidas in a recent podcast.
I could say anti-Semitic things and Adidas can't drop me. Now what? Now what?
Business analysts suspect, guys, that because of the financial impact this is going to have, that slowed down this decision. They're going to lose upwards of $240 million by just the end of this year. And also Adidas has seen its stock price dip. They've got stock piling up around the world because demand has dropped in China and here in the U.S.
All right, Stephanie, thank you so much. Appreciate that report.
You're welcome. Unfolding this morning. Thank you.
And let's keep the conversation going now with Oren Siegel. He is the vice president of the Anti-Defamation League Center on Extremism. Oren, thank you so much for joining us. So we know Adidas just cut ties with Kanye West this morning. This is after several days of silence. In a tweet yesterday, the ADL wrote, "The longer Adidas is silent on Ye's anti-Semitism, the more his racist rhetoric becomes normalized." Why do you think it took so long for Adidas to act, and what's your reaction to them finally taking this step?
So it's unclear what took them so long, but what we do feel is that this is a positive outcome. It illustrates that there are consequences to anti-Semitism. And frankly, we're heartened by the fact that so many celebrities, influencers, other brands joined us in the call for Adidas to take action. So it took a little longer than we had expected, but we need to understand that this is ultimately a positive outcome and that anti-Semitism was responded to.
What kind of message does this send? What impact does it have? What does it really mean when these brands, these businesses, these companies break ties? What does that say when they refuse to work with him?
You know, we're in a moment in time in this country and frankly around the world where anti-Semitism and all forms of hate seem to be on, the front of the news every single day. And so it requires a whole of society approach to push back against that hatred. History will remember what people did in the face of hatred, how they responded, and not simply the hatred itself. So it's important for companies and people to use their voice to stop the normalization of anti-Semitism and hate.
I mean, Oren, do you see any path forward for Kanye West moving forward from this? Is there any way he could come back? Is there any way he could make things right?
I mean, right now it's difficult to see that pathway since he continues to double down on his anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. He doesn't seem to want to be accountable or even understand the impact of his words. But maybe with time, maybe with some education, with some reflection, maybe this person can turn it around. But right now, I think it's important to, amplify those who are speaking out against anti-Semitism, against Kanye West, and not allow his words to sort of win the day.
All right, Oren Siegel, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate having you on this morning.
Yeah, important conversation. Thank you. And coming up on Morning News Now, up for grabs. The Latino vote is in play for both parties in the midterm elections.
When we come back, we're going to take you to Florida, where Latino voters hold more sway than over the tightest races than ever before. Welcome back. Pennsylvania Senate candidates Dr. Mehmet Oz and Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman are gearing up for a debate showdown 2 weeks before the midterms.
Yeah, the two will square off tonight in their first and only debate, and many voters will be watching the highly anticipated contest, including suburban women who say they're waiting for the debate to make their decision. NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns joins us now from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania with more. Hey, Dasha, good morning.
Hey guys, good morning. Look, in this high stakes and very tight race, any number of factors could tip the scales. And there are a few key voting blocks that both of these candidates have really been targeting. One of those, suburban women, as you mentioned there. We spent some time in a blue county and in a red county talking to suburban women. We spent some time at a dance studio and a gymnastics studio. And here's what we learned.
As election season tumbles toward the finish line in suburban Philadelphia, the kids at Upper Merion Dance and Gymnastics Center are flying and falling with abandon. But their moms worry about what happens when no one's there to catch them.
Inflation, it really affects how you parent, what you can do with your kids.
Philadelphia suburbs like Montgomery County are the new battleground. Once Republican strongholds, they helped put Biden in the White House in 2020. But now they're up for grabs again, with issues like the economy and crime top of mind.
Safety in not only education, but regular life. Huge concern with little kids.
Both Senate candidates targeting their messaging towards women here. Republican Dr. Oz stoking those fears about crime.
Deal with the crime and drugs that are creating lawlessness in the southeast of Pennsylvania.
And Democrat John Fetterman hanging his hopes on abortion access.
Woman, that is a choice that belongs to you and that should have always belonged to you.
How big of a factor is abortion in terms of what you do with your vote?
I'm certainly more pro-choice. I don't know if it's the top issue, but it is one of the more important issues for me.
What do you look for in a candidate?
For me, it's mostly the social issues, and having someone that's a true leader isn't pandering to their base.
Cindy is leaning Democratic, but hasn't made up her mind yet on the Senate race. Many we talked to were still undecided, like Montea.
I just want to make my best decision. Because I didn't make the best decision years ago. So
what do you mean by that?
I feel like I voted for the wrong person.
Who'd you vote for?
Trump.
Trump, one reason why Democrats need to win big in places like Montgomery County to balance out losses among rural voters and former Union Democrats in places like Luzerne County in northeastern Pennsylvania. Amy Janoski, a mom of two we met at Joan Harris Dance Studio, is part of that shift.
But you were registered as a Democrat.
I am a registered Democrat.
You're registered as a Democrat now. But you're more interested in sort of more conservative candidates at this point.
Yes, I am.
It's similar issues that have parents' heads spinning here. But Luzerne County could land on a different result. Take Ariane, mom to a ballerina who's worried about safety.
I honestly believe Fetterman would be more of the same. I don't think he's going to be a tough on crime politician, which is what we need right now.
For these women, the outcome of this election is personal.
And definitely the economy, gas prices, food prices. I'm single. I'm a teacher, but I have 5 other jobs.
5 other jobs?
Yeah.
What's your message to people in Washington right now on both sides of the aisle about what that experience is like? What do you want them to know about what life is like right now?
Don't forget about us.
Guys, these women are going to be watching this debate tonight very closely. Several of them still undecided. And on the eve of the debate yesterday, the Fetterman campaign sent out a memo about what to expect at tonight's debate. And they seem to be seeking to lower expectations for their candidate. They said, quote, "We'll admit this isn't John's format," saying if we're all being honest, Oz clearly comes into Tuesday night with a built-in advantage. They also called the circumstances of the debate unprecedented, referencing the closed captioning that Fetterman will need to use because of his lingering auditory processing challenges. And they closed the memo saying that, quote, "John will win this race even if he doesn't win the debate." Guys, Joe, Savannah.
All right, Dasha Burns, we know you'll be watching. Thank you so much. Now, in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis is looking to the Latino community to support him in this year's midterm election.
Governor DeSantis is in a closely watched race with former Governor Charlie Crist. The two debated over key issues last night, including immigration, abortion, and the economy. Now, Telemundo and NBCLX polling shows DeSantis could have a majority of Latino support.
And we have NBCLX national political editor Noah Pransky joining us here in studio for a look at these numbers. Thank you so much. Good to see you again. So let's talk about that poll. Why are we seeing more Latinos support DeSantis? Do the numbers look to you like a general shift to the right, or what does this mean?
Republicans have made gains kind of across the entire spectrum. But in particular, the DeSantis gains really were built during COVID, and he's built on that since then. He's got buy-in from Hispanic voters in Florida. Right now, specifically, we're looking at numbers here. I mean, even his issue of moving migrants from Texas to Massachusetts, he has buy-in on that issue as well. But on the top ticket item, who are you going to vote for this fall? DeSantis has a 7-point lead on his Democratic opponent, Charlie Crist, and his approvals are even higher than that, meaning even some people who plan to vote for Charlie Crist support what DeSantis is doing in office.
It's important to know Latinos are not a homogenous voting group, and the Telemundo polling shows that different heritage groups vote in different ways. So what are some of the differences you're seeing in that polling?
Yeah, I mean, you say not a monolith, especially in Florida. You look at Arizona, California, Texas, largely dominated by Mexican Americans. But in Florida, you've got about a third of them from Cuba, about a third of them from Puerto Rico, and about a third from other countries, largely in Central and South America. And really, these breaks show that, I mean, Cubans are all in on DeSantis. They are ride or die plus 50 points. But you look at everyone else, the rest of the state, and they do break to the left. But that Cuban advantage is so strong. And Republican gains, especially in, again, a lot of a growing base from Venezuela, Nicaragua, other countries that were dominated by socialist or communist countries, he is making gains largely, it looks like right now, more than Democrats can overcome.
Wow. No, I know also this morning we have new numbers on the Senate race between Marco Rubio and Val Demings, potentially a change in Miami-Dade. Tell us what those numbers are showing.
Yeah, so again, this almost mirrors what we see for the election for the governor's race. Marco Rubio +7 likely Hispanic voters in Florida. And what's interesting here is that those numbers are actually identical to what we're seeing in South Florida specifically. Miami-Dade hasn't gone for a Republican in 20 years. Rubio and DeSantis and Republicans are pledging to win Miami-Dade for the first time, and that would be a really big blow to Democrats in Florida.
And you also are getting some numbers that deal with some of these social issues that are getting so much attention in Florida, especially because Governor DeSantis has been pushing some of these issues.
Yeah, we talked about those controversial migrant flights, but we also polled on the issue of the Parental Rights Act, teaching about sexual issues in elementary schools, dubbed by critics the Don't Say Gay bill. This was also popular among Florida Hispanic voters, +13 on this one. 54% say they approve it. So what does it tell us? It either tells us that there is a major shift happening in the southeast part of the country, or it may just tell us that Ron DeSantis is building a brand and people are following him.
That's certainly something to watch for now and in the future. Noah Pransky, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming by.
Coming up, is the risk of a recession mounting for the economy? We'll tell you what Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen thinks is ahead next.
Plus, when we come back, we'll talk with one of this year's winners about how her work is making an impact on the stories surrounding climate change after the break.
We're back now with an exclusive interview with Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen.
Yeah, the former Fed chair sat down with NBC News senior business analyst and host of the 11th Hour on MSNBC, Stephanie Ruhle, to discuss the state of our economy ahead of next month's midterms. And we are pleased to say that Stephanie Ruhle is here with us in studio now. Steph, great to be here. Thanks for coming by. Congrats on this interview. Of course, we're all wondering, we would love to hear from the former Fed chair on inflation. When does she think this could cool? What happened in this interview?
Well, I mean, listen, she's in a situation right now where the Biden administration needs to be walking the walk and talking the talk. You and I both know the economy is, for many voters, the #1 issue, and inflation is on everyone's minds. So I asked her, where are we headed? She believes we are on the path for inflation to go down, but let's be honest, it's definitely not the fast track. Here's what she said.
I have confidence that inflation will come down over the next year or two. So I believe that what they're doing will work.
Do you believe it's peaked?
So I'm not positive. I don't want to forecast month by month inflation numbers. The most recent data suggests we still have inflation that's unacceptably high, but there are good indications earlier in the pipeline that inflation will come down.
It seems like we are on that trail, but for people who are going to vote in 2 weeks from today, you heard it in your last segment, right? People are struggling to pay their bills. And while she can remind us, remember where we were 2 years ago in the middle of a pandemic, a much worse place, and we've done significantly better. It's tough for people to remember that because they're having a hard time.
And then the other issue people are thinking of is, can we fight inflation without sending us into a recession? Is that what's on the horizon? What did she have to say about it?
Listen, she certainly hopes it's not, but every day we hear from another business leader warning that could be the case. She reminds us, though, while inflation is very high, unemployment is very low, and that could save us. Watch this.
When you have a 3.5% unemployment rate and have had over 300,000 jobs a month for the last 3 or 4 months or longer, that is not what most people think of as a recession. I think inflation will come down. People will feel better about the economy as that occurs. And I have
no recession.
I can't rule out the risk of one, but as I said, I believe there is a path toward bringing inflation down in the context of a strong labor market.
So there you have it. I mean, she's on a high wire right now because this could be the thing that sinks Democrats in 2 weeks.
Absolutely. Well, that's exactly what I want to ask about is that a top concern for them right now? And also, any indication on what she's feeling for herself 2 weeks from now?
Well, listen, there has been a lot of buzz out there. Could she step down after the midterms? It's a possibility. And if Democrats do lose 2 weeks from now, many people are asking, will the president's economic team have to shoulder some of that blame? Remember, Janet Yellen herself, as well as the majority of the administration a year ago, said, oh, inflation is short term. It won't be here that long. Right. So we have to wonder, did they make the best decisions given that they miscalculated what was to come? She says they're going to keep it slow and steady. The administration has done a lot to address inflation. And, you know, just last week, the president announced releasing oil reserves to try to lower the price of gas. That Inflation Reduction Act, which just got signed, is going to lower energy prices, healthcare costs, which are huge positives. Here's the problem. They're going to take a while to happen. And they don't have time.
Yeah, not 2 weeks.
No, not 14 days. That's
Stephanie, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Great interview.
Thank you. And let's stay on financial headlines now and start with comments from Intel's CEO about the new U.S. ban on chip exports to China.
CNBC's Savannah Henao joins us with that and other money news. Savannah, good morning.
Good morning. Well, Joe Savannah, Intel CEO says it was only a matter of time before the U.S. government tightened technology restrictions on China. Earlier this month, the Commerce Department announced new curbs on exports of semiconductors and the equipment to make those chips in the interest of national security. Speaking at a Wall Street Journal conference, Pat Gelsinger says the rebalancing of supply chains is critical. Gelsinger was a leader backer of the CHIPS Act, which passed Congress this summer. It provides more than $50 billion in subsidies to build or expand chip plants here in the U.S. Jamie Dimon says world politics are more concerning to him than the possibility of a recession in this country. The J.P. Morgan CEO making the comments at an investment conference in Saudi Arabia. Dimon citing the war in Ukraine and tensions between the U.S. and China. Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon says it will be difficult to get out of embedded inflation without an economic slowdown. Apple is raising the subscription price for Apple TV Plus and Apple Music and the Apple One bundle package. It's the first time the company has raised prices for those services in the U.S. Apple Music will increase by $1 to $10.99 a month or by $10 to $109 a year. Apple TV is going up by $2 a month to $6.99 or $20 to $69 a year. Apple says the change to Apple Music is due to rising costs to license songs.
All right. Thanks, Savannah. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Tonight, some of the world's top climate journalists will showcase the most pressing stories impacting our environment during a special presentation hosted by today's Al Roker and our own Savannah Sellers.
By me, that's right. The show Burning Questions, Covering Climate Now, highlights the work of 23 journalists who are recognized for their reporting on climate change across various mediums, including television, internet, newspapers, you name it. This morning, we're joined by Shannon Osaka. She's a reporter with The Washington Post who won the Emerging Journalist Award. Shannon, good morning. First off, congratulations. This is my second year getting to talk with the emerging journalists, which is very exciting for me. So I appreciate you coming on with us this morning. So talk to us about what you feel has been your most important or consequential story to date when it comes to climate change.
Oh, that's a great question. I think one of my most consequential stories is a piece that I did on France and something that they called the Citizens Climate Convention. So basically what they did is they invited 150 random citizens to come to the French government and to help them figure out how to make decisions about climate change. And it was very interesting because it got to a lot of questions about how do we decarbonize the economy? How do we do it in a democratic way? And in sort of a quintessentially French fashion, all of those 150 French citizens got in a lot of fights with Macron, the president, about what they wanted to do for climate change. So that was a pretty interesting story I got to do.
So Shannon, I mean, it could be argued in general the issue of climate change is underreported, but within that, in your opinion, what's the most underreported climate issue impacting us right now?
I mean, I think that what is underreported is climate solutions. I think that we've gotten to a point where a lot of people are covering all of the extreme weather events that we're suffering, the floods, et cetera, the droughts, the heat waves, but we still need to explain to people that we do have climate solutions. They are available. And the question is whether we're implementing them, whether we're building clean energy, whether we're shifting over to electric cars. Those stories, I think, are still underreported at a lot of the major outlets. And, you know, we're shifting in that direction. Journalism is changing, but it needs to change much faster.
Shannon, also, I want to, if we can also look at the big picture here, and I know that this is sort of what we're trying to tackle with this special, is that a lot of times climate-related stories can sometimes seem too big or too depressing maybe, or too far away from home for somebody to really understand the impact that it could have in your own backyard. But I know you have a different outlook when it comes to reporting in terms of it being too tough to tackle. What is it how is it that you see this and that you think that your reporting stands out in that way for something that readers can take away?
Well, I think one of the really important things that we've learned just about the psychology of climate change is that people, when you tell people this really scary information, what they want to know is, okay, what can I do? What can I personally do to make a difference? How can I get involved? And so what I try to do in my reporting is to say, okay, here are all the different pathways that you personally can take, whether that's installing a heat pump in your house so that you're connected to heat and cooling by electricity, whether that's getting an electric vehicle, whether that's participating in climate protests. All of these individual actions, and you know, we know that individual action is not going to save us from climate change, right? We need systemic change. But I think for readers, it's very important for them to be able to say, okay, here's what I can do personally. Here's something that will help me, so that it doesn't just feel like it's all despairing, there's no hope whatsoever.
Yeah, that solutions-oriented coverage is so important. Shannon, thank you so much. So excited. Last year, I was very proud to dub these the Oscars of climate change, and so I'm very excited to see them again. And congratulations to one of our winners. And you can watch Burning Questions, Covering Climate Now, hosted by, again, myself and our friend Al Roker. It's at 8 o'clock tonight on the World YouTube channel, it's called, as well as on the World channel on TV.
Coming up, remembering an icon.
Yeah, actor Leslie Jordan died yesterday at the age of 67. This morning, we're taking a look back at the life and legacy of the Emmy Award-winning actor whose life off the screen was just as full as the one on it. That's up next. We're back with some news that Swifties are sure to celebrate. Taylor Swift's new album is already smashing all sorts of records, some of which were her own, by the way, just days after it came out. Midnights is now the only album in the past 5 years to sell more than 1 million copies, and it reached that record in just 3 days. Interestingly, nearly half of the total sales were in vinyl. After just a single day, Midnights had the biggest week for a vinyl album since at least 1991. Now, critics say some of those numbers can be traced to people buying multiple editions, but in case you're wondering, the last album to reach 1 million sales was A Reputation, which also was by Taylor Swift back in 2017, and that whole critics multiple,
How many editions did you buy?
Well, yeah, we don't have to get personal about it, but my point is, yeah, people love it so much they're willing to collect. Also, that speaks to her marketing genius, that there are the different versions.
Got it.
Go on.
I think she deflected there. All right.
Yeah, because there's different colors. You need them all. All right. This morning, friends and family are mourning the loss of Leslie Jordan.
The Emmy Award-winning actor died Monday after his car crashed into a tree in Hollywood. Jordan was best known for playing the conniving Beverly Leslie on Will and Grace, but he became a social media sensation, posting videos during the pandemic. His agent says he likely suffered, quote, some sort of medical emergency, which caused him to lose control of his vehicle. Jordan was 67 years old. For more on his legacy, we are joined by NBC Out reporter Alexander Casala. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, like, obviously we know him from Will and Grace, but he had such a wide range of roles. Murphy Brown, Star Trek, American Horror Story. Looking at social media yesterday, I think every single person I know had a picture with him because he just was everywhere all the time. I mean, what's his legacy and how is he being remembered?
I kind of like to call stars like him in Hollywood. His Wikipedia page reads like a CVS receipt because it just goes on and on forever. Like you were saying, Ally McBeal, Murphy Brown, Boston Public, Boston Legal. He really was in everything almost. And even from all the tributes that poured out this week, Dolly Parton calling him a friend. I mean, there were stars that I don't think we even knew were associated with him that wanted to, you know, share their thoughts and everything on him. I really feel like his legacy is so much tied into his queerness and being this visible, feminine, flamboyant person in Hollywood since the early mid-90s. And I think that really is one of the things that from the beginning set him apart from so many other people, just that flair of authenticity and individuality.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something he's remembered for and celebrated for. Prior to his passing, he was declared a national treasure by the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics last year, receiving their coveted Timeless Star Award. We were talking this morning about, you know, some of the things that he said about his family and their embracing of him since he was young and how it formed him into who he was. Just talk through the impact of him, of course, when he was alive on that community, but also the legacy now that he's passed.
He articulated it when I interviewed him. We actually at Today's Show covered him in March 2020, just as he was taking off. I think he had 400,000 followers when I interviewed him. A couple weeks later, he had 5 million. And during that time, he said to me that even though his dad was the most like masculine kind of archetype of a colonel or a sergeant in the war or something like that, he still loved his son and still embraced him. And I think the other really amazing thing about seeing him was he had this amazing intersectionality of being like the gayest person alive and also being like the most Southern person alive, which you don't really see a lot. But that just goes all back to him being true to who he was.
I mean, I've been following him since, you know, his Will and Grace days when he told Karen Walker, I knew I smelled gin and regret, which is one of the most legendary lines. But really, it's young people who really got to know him during the pandemic. He has, I think, now nearly 6 million Instagram followers. What was his appeal to the younger generation?
I think a lot of us have kind of lost that gay grandfather figure in a lot of ways because of the AIDS epidemic. That whole kind of generation was really kind of wiped out by that. And I feel that like that is really something that he can be for all of us, you know? And I also just think it goes back to him being exactly like who he is on his own terms. And I feel that like all of his life, he was doing all this incredible work, but it took, you know, just his iPhone and, you know, these selfie videos with a couch cushion for him to really kind of reach people. But I think it just shows that, you know, that is what the power, and nobody says it better than Leslie Jordan.
Yeah, we were, he wrote a book recently and we were listening to it. And if you're going to read the book, listen to the audio book because it's him reading it and you can't top his voice reading something like that. I highly recommend it. I mean, it's charming and it just makes you feel his energy.
Yeah,
so.
I saw so many people yesterday talking about how it felt like he got them through the pandemic with those videos, you know?
Oh, I mean, like, even for me in the interview in itself, you know, it was the first few weeks and finding that silver lining was so incredibly hard. But I think we did, and we found it in him.
All right.
So cool, you spoke with him also.
Alexander Casala, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. A great look back. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.